The biggest media companies in the world are competing for and pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into future projects, whether they're Bible projects or projects of faith. They don't consider them to be kryptonite anymore. They are actually considering them to be something that is a valuable and important part of a full-time, fully global media strategy. And we've never seen it before.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Paula Faris Show. I am your host, Paula, and I am joined by your favorite guest and co-host, my partner in crime, the one and only husband, John. He's back.
Thanks for having me, Paula.
John, did you know that you're going to be here the entire month of December and possibly the entire month of January with me, or are you just now finding that out?
This December or next December?
No, this December, like 2024 and January 2025.
Okay, I guess. Yeah, I know now.
So, John, you know you're going to be here December. We're going to do an Ask Us Anything episode later this month. We're going to talk about our very first college tour and how one of us embarrassed our daughter on that college tour, and it wasn't you.
Shocking.
Shocking. But I've got to be honest with everybody listening, those watching. So I launched this podcast, The Paula Faris Show. I've done 2 other podcasts. Okay, I did one when I was at ABC, and then I did one a couple of years ago. But this show, when I launched in 2023, I was going after the big names. I got Whoopi Goldberg and Jesse Palmer and Trey Kennedy and you name it. And the highest rated episodes were the episodes at the end of the year with none other than
me.
Exactly. My husband. You guys just want real conversation. So that's why we kind of pivoted after season 1. We've been talking about the things you want to talk about. And John joins me a lot to give his take. And you guys seem to really enjoy his take. I enjoy him.
You're saying I'm not famous enough for you? Or
Honey, you're very famous.
Okay.
But I'm just saying you're not like celebrity status, okay? But you're a celeb in this home. And we love you. And you keep it real. And people tend to really like your point of view. Hey, I like it. That's why we've been together for a long time. How long have we been married now?
24 years.
Yes.
22 of them have been very happy.
I was going to say more like 20. But anyway, before we jump into this episode, John, I want to mention the clothes that I wore in television news, some beautiful clothes. I have a collection with the Saved collection selling basically my entire wardrobe from TV news and a little bit thereafter, and they're all 50% off. We're going to link to that in the show notes. It won't fit you, John, but you can testify to how beautiful some of these clothes were that I'm getting rid of, right?
They are gorgeous clothes. Yes, it's a shame to see them go. Can I sell some of my old ties, because business casual is becoming much more. We don't wear ties anymore in this business.
You can sell them, but I don't know if you can join my collection.
I can't.
You can do your own collection.
Oh.
You can.
All right.
You can just do a tie collection. That's a good idea, though. Because ties are real expensive, and you end up accumulating like 150 of them, right?
I've got quite a few. Maybe I'll just go to Facebook Marketplace, see if there's
that. Well, we'll put the link for my closet sale in the show notes. It's through the Saved collection, 50% off the already sale prices. So you guys are getting this for probably 10 cents on the dollar. Beautiful clothes. I'd love it if you supported it, because part of my proceeds support the Boys and Girls Clubs. Okay, let's jump into this episode, John. One of our struggles as parents is finding what?
Good quality entertainment, not just for you and I, but for our entire family to watch together.
Yes. And so that's why we wanted to invite Dallas Jenkins. He's the creator of The Chosen, which, by the way, was the largest crowd-funded TV series in history. So director and creator of The Chosen, also the director of the very popular holiday movie, which John still hasn't seen. But I saw it and loved it. It is the best Christmas pageant ever movie. That's what it's called. Best Christmas pageant ever. If you haven't checked it out with your family. But this is a huge struggle for us. And look, our teens are probably going to watch shows with us, more adult shows, but we have a 10-year-old in the house too. So finding quality programming that doesn't compromise the cinematography, the storylines. Because when we grew up, John, good quality programming was kind of cheesy, especially that programming in the faith space was real cheesy.
Real
unwatchable.
Cheesy. Yeah, but it's come a long way, and thanks to guys like Dallas who are putting some really good professional quality content out there. So excited to share this episode with you guys.
And John, he told you something that was really encouraging for both of us to hear about the direction of family-friendly content, or whatever you want to call it. But we're seeing a trend that
Yeah, some of the major studios, rather than having to sell them on these projects, they're actually out there aggressively looking for faith-based projects. They're looking for family-friendly projects because there's a huge market out there.
Right. He says he's never seen anything like it.
Never.
So we also found out we have a lot in common with Dallas. John especially has a lot in common with Dallas.
Yeah.
So without further ado, here's Dallas Jenkins and John and I talking about our favorite holiday movies, our favorite family shows, and why we should be really optimistic about the future of family-friendly content. Dallas, meet my husband, John. John, meet
Hi,
Dallas.
John.
Al, big fan.
Well, thank you. As you can tell, I'm already supporting you. So, and your advice. So we're good.
All right. You know why this interview is going to go so well, Dallas? A couple of reasons.
But I can't wait. Yeah.
First of all, you and I were both born in 1975. John's born in 1976. We are all from the Midwest. You're from Illinois,
Indiana.
Michigan. Okay.
Yeah.
We all married our college sweethearts.
Awesome. And my wife was born in 76. She's from Minnesota.
Wow.
So we are covering the 4 primary states. And I know Michigan very, very well. My dad was born and raised in Kalamazoo. I have been to Grand Rapids, Muskegon, the whole 9 yards many, many, many times. Yep. And I know Indiana. Those of us who lived in Illinois and who were on the conservative side of the spectrum looked at Indiana as Mecca. That was our neighbors to the east that seemed to have it figured out before we did. But we have a lot in common. That's good to hear.
And one more element, John, we all love what? Sports.
I was going to say Jesus, but okay.
Well, that too. That's a given. That's a given, right?
As far back as I can remember, I actually learned to read fairly early before I can remember. And every day was the Chicago Tribune sports page. Yeah. And from front to back, I knew the horses that were racing at Arlington racetrack.
Oh my word!
So, yeah, I've been a sports obsessive my whole life, and in fact, before I wanted to make movies, I was going to be a sports broadcaster or an athlete. I didn't know yet, and then I saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in high school with Jack Nicholson, and said, "That's what I want to do," and that changed everything. But I'm still a sports freak.
Yeah. Well, we love Chicago, and Paula actually was a sports anchor in Chicago for 6 years?
Yes, I was.
So many connections.
So, John, do you want to tell Dallas how we met in college because of sports, right? I was in sports while I was in broadcasting, and he played basketball. So
I played basketball. She produced the camera or produced the TV games, and she held the camera, and I got a lot of airtime because apparently some close-ups as well, too.
Yeah. The producer kept saying, "Paula, what is the deal?" He didn't even have the ball
out there.
Dallas, I had the hero cam. And for those listening, the hero cam is like whoever scored the bucket. You get an ISO, a close up of the hero. And it was always John, not because I wanted to always have the shot on John. He just was like the leading scorer. Yeah. I'm just bragging on him a little bit. So college basketball All-American in the house.
That's impressive.
Moons ago.
Yeah, I played a year in college basketball, and then because it conflicted with choir and made some of my theater stuff and broadcasting stuff difficult, I said, I'm a 6'3" white dude. I don't see professional basketball in my future. I need to start focusing better. And so I did end up winning the intramural championship as a senior, which was one of my great memories. But other than that, I kind of shifted gears towards the movie business. So,
and it looked like that decision paid off.
Yes.
It did pay off. So Dallas, you have 4 kids. They're older, right? You have teenagers and then some young adults, correct?
Yeah. 23, 21, 19, 17.
Okay. Yeah. So our
almost
oldest,
empty nester.
Yeah.
Very
almost.
close. One more to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And any advice for those of us who have teenagers, older kids? Our oldest is 17, and then we have 15 and 10.
So I found, and I don't know if this is true of you, and I don't want to stereotype, but my experience personally and with a lot of other parents that we've talked to is that moms have a challenging 13 to 16-year-old season because they can't understand why their kids are such, I'll come up with a friendly term, jerks. Uh-huh. And my wife is constantly, we've gotten past most of these stages, but was always like, he is such a jerk, or he is being such a this way, or she is just so whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like like we all are from 13 to 16. And my wife just had a hard time, like she couldn't fathom the lack of gratitude, the lack of
I know. They're so ungrateful.
Yeah. And the husband intends to be like, yeah, we just kind of accept it because we're not as grateful as we should be either. So we kind of understand it better. But I find that there's different periods of time where dads and moms tend to have a little more relevance. And those teenage years, I feel like dads tend to be a little more accepting of that awful period, and moms have a harder time with it. So just brave the storm.
We're trying.
Believe your husband when he says, yes, this soon will pass. And no, we don't have to be their friend right now. It's okay to just hold the line. They will eventually turn around. So I don't know if that's true for you, but I would say husbands stay strong, wives hold it together just long enough to get past that awful stage where they truly are gaslighting, entitled narcissists.
It's like you've been looking into our household, Dallas, because that's exactly what's going on.
Yes.
Okay, well, yeah, it's how it is. People will do what people have done.
So, okay, John, let's talk about content. You want to take the reins there?
I think one of the first of all, I also want to say thank you, Dallas, for putting out some great content out there.
Amazing.
Paul and I, we struggle to find entertainment that we feel is enjoyable, but also edifying and quality where we could watch it. And if our kids came in, they wouldn't be like, Mom and Dad, what are you actually watching? We've had opportunities where we'll sit down and we'll scroll around for 30 minutes just to find something. And then when we start watching it, we're like, this is terrible. And so just thank you for putting good content out there. But why do you think it's so difficult to find good quality content in today's society?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for that. And that's honestly one of the most beautiful things that I ever hear about The Chosen is I'll run into parents and they'll say, my kids, and sometimes it's as young as 7, 8 years old. But I think just as impactful to me is when they say teenagers, because teenagers are so cynical and hard to please that when they'll say my kids are watching the show with me and we're able to talk about these topics, to give parents another tool in the tool belt of trying to raise your kids in whether it's faith or even just a healthy environment, regardless of your faith background, is so difficult these days. So to have media that your kids actually want to watch, it can be very connective. That's what makes it so important is a lot of times my wife and I, we had our after the kids go to bed shows, so Breaking Bad and Mad Men and some of the great shows of all time. You're like 12-year-old, not ready yet. Right.
Yeah.
But then there's that really fun experience when all of you, including the range of ages in your kids, can all watch something together. Yeah. And the parents don't feel like they have to, they're doing, kind of an obligation, kind of, snoring through it or texting, and doing work on their phones during it, or they're genuinely enjoying it, even though it's family friendly. Pixar movies are obviously a great example of that, where they're funny, they're witty, they have adult humor, they have adult themes, and they also have child humor and child themes. And yet there's only, one every couple of years. And then you've got some of these studios that start going in a different direction in terms of whether it's morally or the statements they're trying to make in their movies and shows. And then you go onto a streaming platform and you're like, well, okay, I like this thing, but it's right next to this other thing. So I can't really trust my kids to have the remote without us around. And so that's one of the reasons why I do what I do is I'm in many ways, I'm producing content for the college age me. When I was in college and I started really loving media and there was so little that I could watch that was edifying. And yet the edifying stuff was so crappy, in terms of quality. And so the college me, the high school me, the parent in me, I'm in many ways trying to fill gaps that I either don't have filled currently in my own home or didn't have growing up. And that's really, I think, part of my calling.
And those gaps are huge. So you mentioned kids asking their parents to watch The Chosen. Our son, our middle guy, JJ, he's 15, and let's sit down, let's watch The Chosen. It's literally one of his favorite shows. He's a different kid. Like, he's very disciplined. He's like a man of deep conviction. And he has a question for you coming up a little bit later when we talk about The Chosen. But I want to ask you brought up a good point, Dallas. You said, you're trying to find, content that you can watch together. And, you and Amanda, your wife, would have shows that you guys would watch after the kids went to bed. Well, we have teenagers, so they're now staying up just as late, if not later than us. Last night, we're like, let's check out Yellowstone, like the first, not the first season. Like, we've watched it. And like within 5 minutes, we're like, and our kids too are older too. They're 17 and 15. We're like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that. So are there any tips that you have any advice on how we can find shows that our whole family will watch.
Well, I don't necessarily have advice. There isn't a streaming platform that exists solely for that purpose yet, at least. There's some people that are
starting one.
Well, I'm actually, yeah, I mean, I'm actually, part of a team that's putting together some ideas for that's down the road. But all that to say, I mean, the Chosen app, for example, which is totally free, has our mothership show on it, the 7-season show, and has extra content. And we're developing right now, which will be releasing next year, The Chosen Adventures, which is an animated series that is written by us and supervised in a way that we want it to not only be kid friendly, but also to have enough jokes and inside references and stuff that parents can appreciate it. But genuinely, even that, I bring that up not to promote my own thing, but to actually say that's not enough. Even if you go to the Chosen app, there's 2 shows, and then maybe another one eventually. And then, there are, of course, parental controls and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, it just means you have to be vigilant. You have to be willing to say, kid, you can't have a TV in your room, because even if I trust your heart, even I, as your dad, was not capable at your age and am still not capable as an adult.
Loads don't close till 25. I mean,
right. So you don't have the discernment and the strength to, in that moment when it's midnight and the parents are asleep and no one will know, you don't have that strength to choose 100 times out of 100 the right show to avoid or to watch. I'm 49 years old. I'm a male. I still have to have protections on my computer and accountability partners and all those things so that I'm not watching the things that tempt me, that most of the time I'm strong. Every now and then, late at night, everyone's in bed. You figured out how to make sure no one knows, and you're going to be tempted. And I don't think any of us on this side of heaven ever grasp or reach full 100% trust and accountability on our own. So as parents, we have to be more vigilant. We have to be willing to say no. We have to be willing to have guardrails, knowing that our kids won't appreciate them in the moment, but will appreciate them later, and that their hearts and minds are protected. And so the benefit of that is that you are more engaged with your kids. You have a reason to check in. You have a reason to say, all right, you know what? These screens all stay in this area. The phones don't actually go in, because that's the other thing. The kids today, they go, okay, fine, I won't watch TV, but they're one click away on YouTube,
on their phone,
Instagram, from seeing things that we don't want them seeing. When you are watching a screen, it's going to be in the common area. And, we're going to set up Covenant Eyes on your phone. That great app that means that every site you visit gets logged and then just shared with an accountability partner.
Wait, what is the name of this app? I haven't heard of it.
It's called Covenant Eyes. Yeah.
Like the Ark of the Covenant and Eyes.
Yeah. Covenant Eyes. It's a tremendous app. I've used it for myself for 15 years, and it doesn't have blockers it could, if you want, you can set it accordingly. But the problem with a lot of things that are parental controls or pornography blockers is that sometimes they can block things that actually aren't that bad. You just, or especially in my line of work in media, not everything should be blocked. Here's the thing though. Everything that I visit as a dad, and we have this now for our whole family, but it started with me. Every site that I visit is just tracked and logged. And then every 2 weeks, a report is sent to my 2 accountability partners, and it will say if there's a red flag or anything that's of concern. And if there is, they just reach out. And if it's a problem, like if I actually have, which I've never done just because I know that my friends are going to see it, it's easy to avoid the temptation. But if there's ever an issue, they're just going to forward it to my wife, which I definitely do not want. And so it's I'd like to say that I'm strong enough and disciplined enough to never need it.
No.
But I just am really willing to admit that I'm not. And so we've set that example, and our kids followed as well.
Yeah. Dallas, you had mentioned, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and most of the content, whether it was Christian music or Christian entertainment, was just not good.
Cheesy.
It was very cheesy, corny. Cheesy. But do you see like a real trend that's happening probably over the last 10 to 15 years? Like some of the stuff that's being put out, especially The Chosen, is high quality, really good acting, really good writing, storylines. Do you see a trend for that, and why do you think that is?
Well, I think that there was a shift maybe back in the early 2000s. Passion of the Christ might have had something to do with that. But other projects, one by one, it started to become okay for parents to consider film and television as a potential career choice or even ministry choice or a valid pursuit for their kids, and colleges started to develop better programs. I mean, there was a time when I was growing up where Hollywood was so evil in our minds that we considered it as something you need to avoid or boycott, not something you need to engage with and be part of and be salt and light to. And I started realizing even in high school that didn't make sense to me. So I was there was an early group of us that were making films. They were outside the Hollywood system, but trying to be good. And we were stumbling. And, you know, when you look back on it, we didn't always succeed, but we had the vision and the hope that what we're currently experiencing would eventually happen. And now, as I'm talking to you, not only has the quality improved from multiple angles and there's more people on the bench who are being developed to tell these kinds of stories, but studios are not only looking at it as a cute curiosity, but they're actually actively getting involved. The biggest media companies in the world are competing for and pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into future projects, whether they're Bible projects or projects of faith. They don't consider them to be kryptonite anymore. They are actually considering them to be something that is a valuable and important part of a full-time, fully global media strategy. And we've never seen it before. And so with that, with the increased talent comes increased opportunity. With increased opportunity creates gaps that need to be filled. And so I think that's what we're seeing. We're about a decade behind the faith music scene, but starting to slowly but surely catch up.
Well, we're so glad that you are one of the instrumental players in filling those gaps. You mentioned the demonization of Hollywood. I don't know if you ever heard of this publication, but growing up, my parents subscribed to something called Movie Morality Guide. And like they would give any movie a score. It didn't matter if it was a Pixar movie, like they would ding it for the stupidest things. And I felt like I couldn't watch any movies, and all of the, film and theater was pretty much demonized, but I'm glad to see these new trends. So, okay, that said, Dallas, we want to know maybe your favorite family shows. Okay, besides The Chosen, and I know you have another project in the works with Bear Grylls. I'm so fired up about it. The Chosen in the Wild with Bear Grylls. But give us maybe your top 5 favorite family shows that you could feel comfortable watching with your entire family.
And by entire family, are you referring to, kids, below the age of 10?
Sure. Yes.
Because I do think that
what? That is a different audience. You're right. Yeah. So maybe maybe it could be any show below the age of 10 or above the age of 10. So we could throw them all in one bucket if you want to specify this is good for young kids and parents, and this is good for a little bit more mature audiences.
Because I would say that regardless of whether or not, or of what you think of Disney as a company, I know that there's people who debate whether they're woke or not or whatever. And we tend to, as a family, we focus on one project at a time. We try not, I think it becomes fairly challenging if you're like, everything that ever comes from any company we disagree with overall we're going to write off. I think we try to focus on project by project. And so when you look at Disney Channel and even some of the projects that Disney Pixar has done, even Nickelodeon, I mean, they're in kids entertainment actually has many times cracked the code of wit, quality and family friendliness. I mean, I think of one of our favorite family shows ever was Gravity Falls from Disney. It was so funny and so witty and so warm.
Never watched it.
Oh, it's great. Okay. Gravity Falls is fantastic. SpongeBob SquarePants obviously is legendary. And yes. And even as adults, my wife and I still will joke about that show and remember lines from it. Terrific. We would watch that as a family. The Pixar movies, the vast majority of them are just tremendous. We still, we just watched Inside Out 2. I mean, I was ugly crying. I mean, it was just so beautiful. And Disney is trying to redirect now. Bob Iger has said, all right, less agenda. We're going to go back to just great entertaining storytelling. So there's really some good stuff. Every Christmas we watch It's a Wonderful Life without an exception. We weep together every time. It's just so wonderful. So there's movies that we have that are on repeat for us at certain times of the year. But yeah. And now when it comes to teenagers, there are shows that all of us have managed. We have kind of a, Breaking Bad falls under the category of once you're in the neighborhood of 15 to 16, you can start, we'll kind of watch that over again with you. And so that's another, again, not a family show, but it's also not titillating. It doesn't make, sexual immorality or even violence look like an attractive thing that you're going to, that you're having to kind of say, now kids don't do this at home. It is a morality tale in many ways. And so it's mature for sure.
That's one of John's favorite shows is Breaking Bad. I watched it. It's so good.
Oh, legendary. Yeah. I would consider it one of the top 2 or 3 shows of all time. Friday Night Lights, another one that legendary. I mean, everyone in our family has seen it. Again, I wouldn't say below 10, I wouldn't even say below 12 years old, maybe, but older than 12, great. Just fantastic.
Yeah. Maybe what about your favorite holiday movies? And you mentioned It's a Wonderful Life. What are your top 5? And we have to put the best Christmas pageant ever in there because it's phenomenal, getting, I think, 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Not quite. So
99%? I thought it was 99%.
Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is 98%. There's been a few trolls who came in and started bringing that number down, which is great.
They don't count.
98% is pretty awesome. And then here's the thing, the critics score is 90%, which for a family PG, Christmas movie, especially with some strong faith elements, it's ultimately putting the spotlight on Jesus as the meaning of Christmas.
Yes.
The New York Times gave us a positive review. That's pretty
No way.
Yeah.
Did?
Yeah. So, but all that to say, so that is, we are hearing from people that's going to become for them a new holiday classic, which is beautiful. It's a Wonderful Life is the greatest of all time. It's the greatest movie of all time.
So good.
Christmas or otherwise. We love Home Alone. Home Alone's a masterpiece. A Christmas Story and Elf, like two movies that I'm okay with, but I'm not enamored. I'm not over the top with. My kids and Amanda love them a little more than I do, but they're great. They kind of represent a memory, right? They you feel something watching them. Even just the act of watching it feels like a nostalgic thing. Good. So when it comes to holiday movies, that's up there. There's the George C. Scott Christmas Carol, which I think is the best Christmas Carol that's out there, along with A Muppet Christmas Carol, which is also a masterpiece. So there's a few. It begins and ends with It's a Wonderful Life. That's the one we never, ever, ever miss on Christmas Eve.
Amazing.
We've seen most of those, but a couple I've written down, so we're going to add those to the list. Thank you, Dallas.
Yeah. And you know what I want to do? I'll actually put all of those in the show notes. So we'll make a list. How about if we do some of the work for everybody listening too? I agree with you on It's a Wonderful Life. Just one of the, regardless holiday, one of the top movies of all time. But you think it's the top movie of all time. So that's high praise, Dallas, coming from you. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about the best Christmas pageant ever. I adore this movie. I did not read the book. Okay. This is an adaptation of the 1972 classic from Barbara Robinson. It follows the 6 herdman kids. They are wild. They take over the town's Christmas pageant. But Dallas, I was reading that you read the book as a child, but then you read it again about 15 years ago, and you kind of became obsessed with the idea of turning this into a major film. And you say that you were born to make this movie. So 15 years ago, you started researching whether or not you could get the rights. It's been a long, long, long process. How did you eventually get the rights to direct this movie?
Yeah, I read the book to my kids and had forgotten how funny, witty, nostalgic it is, and then how much it puts a spotlight on the Jesus of Christmas, right? The true story of the nativity, and how seeing it through the eyes of these kids who are troubled and outsiders and in poverty actually brought them closer to the true story of what Christmas is about than the rest of us. And so that was just so meaningful to me. I closed the book and I said, I have to make this movie. And every year I would chase down the rights from the rights holders, and they kept saying, well, let's set up another studio with a big time director. And so it just couldn't get made. Every year I would check in and they were like, oh, it hasn't been made yet, but they renewed the rights. And I'm like, guys, please give it to me. And they were like, well, no, they were working with this big studio, right? And about 5 years ago, the rights came back to them. They eventually expired, and now they had the ability to go with someone new. And I'm begging again. And they finally told me, no, we're going to go with this other new studio that's really excited about it and has a big director in mind. And I was so devastated. So I went and told my wife. We were teary-eyed and frustrated. I went to my calendar that was on my phone and on my computer that for 15 years, every week, had been reminding me to pray for Christmas pageant and to just pray that God would, kind of fulfill what I believed was the calling, or do something to help this project get made. And I went to delete it because I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't get my hopes up anymore. And I just felt this very strong feeling from God and this strong impression. Don't do that. Don't do that. Not yet. And so I was like, okay. And so I'm still frustrated, but a couple of years ago, I check in again. I'm like, hey, what's the deal? I'm bugging you again. And the guy says, oh, what a coincidence. Just last week, the studio forgot to renew the rights. We have the rights back. And my mom just called me a few days ago and said, have you heard of this show called The Chosen? And I said, oh, that's funny. The creator of The Chosen is always bugging me for the rights to best Christmas pageant ever. She said, "Are you crazy? He's the only one who can make this movie. You better give him the rights. What's wrong with you?" He goes, "So I watched the show. Let's talk." And so now that I get to tell you guys that right now there is a movie in theaters that is impacting people and people are really responding strongly to, that's called, it's the best Christmas pageant ever, that directed by Dallas Jenkins, is in and of itself a calling fulfilled, and something that I didn't know would ever happen.
That's amazing. I think you've got a movie about making that movie, that 15-year journey. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. So it means a lot that you loved it, Paula. You have to get John to it now.
I will.
John,
100%.
stop being a slacker and like having basketball practice every day and going to the football games. And I promise we're taking the whole family. I promise.
I will do it. Yeah. When I was hearing the story, like just thinking about this for 15 years and taking a book and then, in your mind, what that story is going to look like, putting it on the big screen. How do you do that? Like, did you have like a whiteboard? Do you have a visualization? Like, how are you creating what you think this book is going to look like on the big screen? I've always been fascinated by that.
Yeah. John, by the way, John's big on visualization as a coach. So this is like, he geeks out with this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and just so you know, if I wasn't a filmmaker, I would be a basketball coach. That was always my second career choice. So I'm glad to hear you're doing that. I wrote down notes in the original copy of the book that my wife brought home. I still have it. I would envision it in my head. I had ideas for different things on how to take the book and adapt it, because you can't just obviously take a book and just reenact everything. There are certain things a book can do that a movie can't, and vice versa. So when it finally came time that I got the rights, and so we started writing the script, then it's my job as the director to communicate my vision to all of the people who run each of the departments: production design, costumes, the casting department, hair and makeup, all of that. Make sure that we're all making the same movie. And I really, on the first page of the script that everyone read was a description by me. And it was visualization, John. It was, these are some of the films that have inspired what I'm looking for in the tone and the look of this film. It should feel timeless. It should feel nostalgic. You shouldn't know what decade it's in. Movies like Babe, which is a masterpiece. That's a movie you need to watch as a family if you haven't. Paddington 1 and 2 are brilliant films that have a beautiful tone to them. And I would say, look, I want this to have a feel of Norman Rockwell come to life. And so that just kind of passed through my entire team, and every decision we made went through that filter.
That's amazing.
That is.
When's it going to do? Any idea? I mean, is it going to be on a streaming network pretty soon? I know it's still in theaters. Fingers crossed.
Well, of course, eventually. Every movie comes to streaming soon. Yes. But we really, right now, I believe this is the kind of movie you should see in theaters. I'm not just saying that selfishly. I'm saying that when you experience the laughter and the tears, it's so witty and funny based on this book. And then the ending, I mean, everyone, I assume this is true of you, Paul. I don't know, but there had to be a little tear at least. I don't know if you're a crier or not, but
I'm not really a crier, but you did. I'm a tough, like, nut to crack. And I was in tears. Even though I had to watch it on a screener on my laptop. So I haven't seen it in the theater yet, because I was able to screen it before it came out.
I do hope people will see it in theaters, because it's a community experience. On the big screen, it was meant to be seen on the big screen. Now, if you can't, or if you just, if you're not able to, that's fine. Eventually it will come to streaming, of course. But right now we're loving the reactions that we're getting from people who've seen it with their friends and family. And it's the kind of movie that you don't have to drag, your friend along to, because you're thinking, oh, this represents my values, so you're going to have to sit through me.
No, it's not like
that. Yeah, it's not like that at all. It really is for everybody.
And the casting is brilliant. The casting is like, it is honestly perfection. And those kids are just perfect for their roles. So I can't wait to take the whole family to the theater. John, I'm just telling you now, I'm going to get a big bucket of popcorn. 100%. I'm going to fill it up halfway, put butter on it, then fill it up the rest of the way, more butter. So this is going to be the full experience. And I know we're going to wrap in a second, but The Chosen, we talked about it earlier. Our 15-year-old is always asking us to sit down and watch it. You're going to release season 5 next year. But one thing I just have to say, so we lived in New York for a long time. So many of our friends were Jewish. And I have to say that's something that I really appreciate. And I don't know if it gets talked about enough, is how beautifully you depicted Judaism for our dear friends, our dear Jewish friends. I just thought, like, for me, that's one of the most beautiful parts of the whole project, Dallas.
Well, that's huge. It's because of we're obsessed with authenticity. And so when you're taking these amazing Bible stories and then you're going to not only try to portray them, but add context, cultural context, historical context, full biblical context, and yes, artistic imagination. You want to be as authentic and plausible as possible. And so the Jewishness of Jesus and the Jewishness of this story is essential to understanding the truth of it. We're seeing Israel, people in Israel that normally would never, ever even consider, if not, or even not be offended by a project that points to Jesus. They are embracing this show because of the Jewishness. They're saying some of them are saying, we didn't know Jesus was a rabbi. Like our attention to detail about the Jewish prayers and customs and the Jewishness of our faith, which I don't believe any true Christian can fully understand who God is without acknowledging and embracing the roots of our faith, which are Jewish. I think that that's an essential part of the story and has been key in the fact that 30 to 40% of our viewers are not traditional believers, and a large chunk of them are Jewish who appreciate what you're saying. So that's I'm glad you picked up on that.
That's amazing.
Anytime you're putting out a show, a movie, a book, you never know how the consumer is going to enjoy it. When did it hit you that this is actually a big deal? This is a hit, that it's going even farther and wider than maybe you thought, or maybe you always knew it was going to be this big?
Well, I didn't know anything. And that's because I really, truly, because of a failure that I experienced in my career and didn't know if I'd ever make another movie again, and really started to embrace this concept of, it's not my job to feed the 5,000. It's only to provide the 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's why the name of our studio is 5 and 2 Studios. So I just focus on the 5 and 2, and I'm not surprised or disappointed when something goes abnormally well or abnormally poorly, because I really have embraced this notion of I just have to honor God, honor my wife, and everything after that is just is up to him, and I can't be responsible for. So when COVID hit, when the show first had its big tipping point, when we really started to see significant traction, but I mean, even this year, this past year has doubled our viewership over what had taken place in the previous 5 years, right? So the growth has been continuing so rapidly that there's never been a point where we can go, wow, this is really cool. It's always like, wow, we have to catch up all over the world. It's in every country in the world. It's being dubbed into hopefully 600 languages. I mean, we're just trying to catch up every day. We're not settling or appreciating probably as much as we should be what's taken place.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you. I'm going to save the last question for JJ, our 15-year-old who just loves the show. And sometimes he's a man of few words. But I said, JJ, we're interviewing Dallas Jenkins, and he's a big fan of yours. I said, what do you want me to ask? So are you ready for this hard-hitting question from our 15-year-old Dallas? I'll
steel myself for it. Sure.
Okay. He said, Dallas, how did you come up with the idea for the show?
I was filming a short film for my church's Christmas Eve service in 2017 about the birth of Christ from the perspective of the shepherds. It was after I just had my big career failure. And so I'm shooting it on my friend's farm in Illinois, 20 minutes from my house. And I was binge watching some other shows, and I realized there's never been a multi-season show about Jesus. There's been movies and miniseries. They tend to be kind of fitting in quite a bit into a short amount of time. You just go from miracle to miracle, Bible verse to Bible verse. You can't have the character development that you have from any other show that you'd normally watch. And so that's where I had the idea, and didn't think anything would come of it. But that short film went viral and launched the biggest crowdfunding effort in media history at the time. And the rest is history. So
that's amazing.
You said character development. I think that's one of the things that I enjoy most about it. Getting to watch the disciples and their journey, getting to watch, I think, one of the best casted individuals, Jesus. Jonathan plays such an amazing Jesus, and just to watch these people grow and develop, and they really become part of you when you watch them through the season. So yeah, that's been really cool.
Well, thanks for that. Cool. Yep. Appreciate it.
Yep. I do think you might have some basketball coaching in your future. John coached college basketball. He's now back. Now that we're in South Carolina, he has a full-time day job, but he is coaching youth basketball. So if you guys maybe want to be like coach a team, or maybe like down in the future, an intramural basketball team with a 6'3" and a 6'4" white guy, maybe get some bigger guys to come in. I'm sensing a basketball team down the road. Okay.
Let's go for it. One body, many parts, right?
Yep.
Amazing. Yep. All right, Dallas, thank you. God bless and happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. John, how encouraged were you by that conversation, just hearing the direction of content and programming?
Very encouraged. First of all, Dallas is just a really cool, down-to-earth guy that I would spend lots of time with. He seems like he'd be a really good friend. But very excited about the future of the more family-friendly content. And look at you. You actually changed since we last spoke about this interview. You're wearing your Come and See. It's the Chosen sweatshirt. So
it's
better
the
than the MTV one. It is. Come and See.
I decided to wear MTV during the interview, and then I said, you know what, I'm gonna change, and I'm gonna put the official Chosen gear on. So I'm wearing a Come and See sweatshirt. But yeah, you guys might actually coach basketball together one day. You guys have a lot in common. Maybe an intramural basketball leagues in your future, John.
Yeah, I'm sure with all the free time that he and I have, then we could definitely figure out a way to coach middle school or high school sports together.
I love it. You're already doing high school. And oh my gosh, we're already like at each other's throats because you're just doing so much right now. I love you, by the way. Okay, so some of our holiday favorite movies. I just got finished watching Christmas Chronicles 1 and 2. Love that. But we'll put a link in the show notes of all of the holiday movies that Dallas mentioned and some of the shows that he likes. I'll also link it in my personal newsletter. If you haven't signed up for that, make sure you sign up at paulafarisofficial.com. Just authentic stories about life. We keep the conversations here going. Insider access, fun giveaways. John is for sure signed up for it, but go to Paula Faris Official.
I think I signed up twice with 2 different emails just because I love the content so much. Yeah.
You love the content that much?
Oh, love it. Love it. It's
Is
great.
it like surprising when you open the newsletter? You're like, wow, I didn't know this was going on in Paula's life.
I'm always surprised by things that I hear about you from social media and through your newsletters. That's how I stay up to date with you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for doing that.
I love you so much, honey. So anyway, this has been really great. But I'm just super encouraged by what we're hearing and the trends that we're seeing. Season 5 of The Chosen, if you haven't watched The Chosen, that was really fascinating to me when Dallas said, again, not only was it the largest crowd-funded TV series in history, but 30 to 40% of the consumers, of the viewers, are not traditional believers. I think just it's a well-done show. It's compelling, the storylines, and regardless of your faith, I think it's just a beautiful show that you can watch in front of your family safely. And there's great storylines, great moral undertones. So
great acting.
The acting's incredible, the casting's incredible, all of it. I can't say enough about it. So season 5 of The Chosen is out in 2025. Next week, John and I are going to talk about our first college visits. And look, our daughter's a junior. This is a new territory for us and not really sure how we're supposed to navigate it. And it's very clear as to what's happening on the college tours that we don't know what we're doing. Right, John?
Yeah. We're rolling with the punches right now, figuring it all out.
And then the following week, it's an Ask Us Anything episode. So make sure you have DM'd me or responded to my personal newsletter. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Ask Us Anything. It's a AUA episode, right?
Yep.
Ask Us Anything and Ask Us Anything episode.
AUA.
So, and then we're going to be off the last 2 weeks of the year just because we need time to rest. You need time to rest. And, we don't feel like talking about it for 2 weeks, right? I just don't.
We're going to decompress at the end of the year.
All right, honey.
Take our breath and we'll be back in 2025.
I love you, John. You're such a great sport. Can't wait to keep talking about it with you the next 2 weeks. Take some time off and then really get after it. Talking about it, that is, at the beginning of the year.
All right. Love you too.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And for those of you watching on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.